What if the night you were stood up turned into the night you found a family? Stay with me because Serena's story will make you believe in second chances. The soft glow of the pendant lamps inside Linen Grove Bistro should have felt warm, but to Serena Caldwell, it only highlighted the ache sitting in her chest. She had been there nearly an hour, waiting for a man she had never met, a blind date her friend insisted would be worth her time. She checked her phone again. No calls, no texts. The untouched glass of wine in front of her seemed lonelier with every passing minute. Around her, laughter and the clink of cutlery rose and fell, reminders that everyone else's evening was unfolding as planned while hers slipped into disappointment. When the waiter came by, his voice gentle, Serena forced a small smile. She was about to ask for the check when a stir at the front door caught her eye. A man in his early 30s, hair a little tousled as though he had rushed there, was speaking quickly to the hostess, his hand resting on the shoulder of a little girl with wide, hopeful eyes. "Please," he said, his tone low but urgent. "It's her birthday. I promised her the chocolate cake here. We don't need a full table, just a seat at the bar." The hostess shook her head with an apologetic smile. Friday nights at Linen Grove were impossible without a reservation. Serena could see the child's expression falter, her small voice rising. "It's okay, Daddy. We can go somewhere else." There was such resignation in her tone that it struck something deep in Serena's heart. She glanced at her own empty table, a reservation for two that had become a silent reminder of rejection. Before she could second-guess herself, Serena stood, her voice carrying just enough across the restaurant. "Excuse me, you can join me if you'd like. I have a table for two, and it seems my companion isn't going to show." The man turned, surprise flashing in his eyes. For a moment he hesitated, as though weighing pride against his daughter's anticipation. "That's very kind," he replied, stepping closer, "but we wouldn't want to impose." The little girl tugged at his hand, her face brightening. Serena met her gaze, warm and steady. "Really, you'd be doing me a favor. I'd much rather share the table than sit through the rest of this dinner alone." The child's excitement broke the father's hesitation. He offered his hand. "Marcus Hale, and this is Clara." Serena shook it gently, noticing the calluses of someone who worked hard and the kind eyes that softened as he looked at his daughter. "Serena Caldwell," she said, "and I promise you're not interrupting, you're saving me." Clara slid eagerly into the empty chair across from Serena, her legs swinging beneath the seat, her face glowing with the innocence of a child who still believed in small miracles. Marcus sat beside her, gratitude written across his features. For the first time that evening, Serena felt the weight lift from her chest. What had begun as another failed date was suddenly transformed by the laughter of a little girl and the quiet strength of her father, an unexpected beginning she hadn't seen coming. The menus were placed in front of them, and Serena noticed immediately the way Marcus's jaw tightened as his eyes moved down the page. He tried to hide it, but she recognized the flicker of hesitation, the quick glance toward Clara, who was already leaning over the children's menu with sparkling eyes. "They have star-shaped pasta, Daddy," Clara whispered, her voice carrying the thrill of discovery, as though she had uncovered a treasure map. "Can I try it, please?" Marcus's smile was tender yet edged with caution. "We'll see, Clara. Let's not get too carried away." Serena leaned in slightly, her tone gentle. "You know, this dinner is on me. Truly, think of it as an unexpected business expense. My colleague canceled last minute, and I'd feel far better if the night wasn't wasted." She let the words slip out smoothly, offering him a graceful way to accept without wounding his pride. His gaze lifted to hers, conflicted, the weight of responsibility clear in his expression. "That's generous, but no buts," she interrupted with a small, reassuring smile. "I insist. Consider it my thank you for saving me from a lonely night." Clara, oblivious to the unspoken tension between adults, clapped her hands. "That means I can have the pasta, right?" Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head in surrender. "Looks like I'm outnumbered." Dinner unfolded with surprising ease. Clara filled the air with stories from school, her words tumbling out in a rush, as if she were afraid she might forget them if she didn't share fast enough. She spoke about the gold star she earned that week, the spelling test she had practiced for, even the way her best friend had tripped during recess and laughed so hard she forgot to cry. Serena listened with genuine delight, nodding, asking questions, laughing in all the right places. Every so often she caught Marcus watching her, as though trying to decipher why a stranger would so easily step into this moment with kindness. She answered his unspoken questions with warmth in her eyes, with steady patience that made it clear she wasn't keeping score. When the waiter returned with a chocolate cake topped by a single flickering candle, Clara's face lit up brighter than the flame itself. The entire restaurant seemed to soften as Serena and Marcus leaned in to sing, their voices blending, uneven but warm. Clara swayed in her chair, grinning from ear to ear. "Make a wish," Serena whispered, her voice soft as velvet. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, tiny hands clasped in front of her chest, her lips moving in a secret prayer only she would know. With one determined breath, she blew out the candle, plunging the table back into the glow of the bistro's golden lights. The cheer that followed wasn't loud, but it was real. Serena clapped softly. Marcus ruffled Clara's hair, and the little girl giggled, cheeks flushed with happiness. In that moment, the weight of Serena's earlier disappointment had melted away. The sting of rejection from her absent date no longer mattered. What filled the space instead was the laughter of a child and the quiet gratitude of a father who hadn't expected this kindness. As the cake was divided, Clara smeared chocolate across her smile, offering a forkful to Serena as if they had known each other for years. Serena accepted the bite with laughter, her heart catching at the sweetness of the gesture. Marcus watched, his expression caught between amusement and something deeper, something unspoken. For the first time in a long while, Serena felt the night turn into more than a salvage from loneliness. It felt like a beginning, soft, unexpected, wrapped in chocolate and candlelight, with the laughter of a little girl sealing the promise of something she couldn't yet name. As the last crumbs of chocolate cake disappeared from Clara's plate, the easy rhythm of conversation settled in like an old song, familiar, comfortable, even though they had only just met. Serena leaned back, her wine glass resting between her fingers, and watched Marcus as he spoke about his life. His words were simple, honest, without the flourish of someone trying to impress. "I teach English at Willowbrook High," he explained, a modest shrug lifting his shoulders. "I also coach the wrestling team, keeps me busy and tired most days." He glanced at Clara, who was licking frosting from her fork, and a quiet smile softened his features. "But she's worth every bit of it. It's just been us since her mom passed away." The words hung in the air, not heavy but tender, carrying both loss and resilience. Serena felt her chest tighten, not with pity, but with admiration for the steady way he said it. He didn't hide the truth, nor did he linger on it. He simply spoke like a man who had built his world around his daughter, brick by careful brick. "I'm sorry," Serena murmured, her voice low, sincere. Marcus shook his head gently. "Don't be. Life gave me Clara, that's more blessing than burden." He reached over, brushing a stray curl from his daughter's forehead. Clara smiled at him, oblivious to the weight of his confession, and returned to her cake as though nothing in the world could break her joy. Serena wanted to tell him everything in that moment, about the boardrooms and the endless meetings, about Caldwell innovations and the weight of decisions that shifted global markets. She wanted to admit that while he was stretching paychecks, she was managing billions, but the thought of watching his warm gaze cool with caution made her falter. So instead, she took a sip of wine, and when he asked what she did for work, she let her voice remain calm. "I'm in investments," she said vaguely. "I help manage portfolios, mostly in renewable sectors. It keeps me busy, but flexible enough to travel." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, not pressing further, as though he trusted people at their word. Serena was grateful for that. For one night, she wasn't a CEO with a name splashed across financial journals. She was just a woman sitting across from a father and his daughter, laughing at Clara's stories about her gold star in school. When the plates were cleared and the night finally began to wind down, Clara leaned over to Serena, her eyes wide with innocent excitement. "Tomorrow we're going to the playground at Evergreen Park," she announced, "the big one with the monkey bars." "Do you like monkey bars?" Marcus chuckled. "Clara, I'm sure Serena has plans." Serena hesitated, feeling a choice rise in her chest. She could return to her world of conference calls and polished schedules, or she could step into something far simpler, something real. "Actually," she said softly, meeting Marcus's eyes, "I don't have plans. What time will you be there?" The surprise flickered across his face, quickly melting into a smile that reached his eyes. "Around noon, if that works." "It's perfect," Serena replied. As they stood outside Linen Grove Bistro, the cool night air brushing against her skin, Serena watched Marcus take Clara's small hand. The picture they made was so natural, so whole that for a fleeting second she longed to be part of it. She slipped into her waiting car only after they had disappeared around the corner, her heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about markets or shareholders. She was thinking about monkey bars, a little girl's laughter, and the man who had unknowingly stepped into her story. The sun shone gently over Evergreen Park, casting long ribbons of light across the grass as families gathered near the playground. Serena arrived just before noon, dressed simply in jeans and a soft blouse, her hair loose around her shoulders. For once, she hadn't carefully calculated her appearance for an audience or a boardroom. Today she wanted only to blend into the laughter and chatter of a Saturday afternoon. She spotted Marcus easily. He stood near the monkey bars, arms crossed loosely, his posture relaxed but attentive. Clara was halfway across, her small hands gripping each rung with fierce determination. "Come on, Clara," Marcus encouraged, his voice warm with pride. "Just one more bar, you've got it." When Clara reached the last rung and dropped safely into her father's arms, Marcus spun her once in a celebratory hug. The little girl squealed with delight, her cheeks flushed pink from effort. It was in that moment Serena stepped closer, and Clara's eyes widened with recognition. "You came," she shouted, breaking free from Marcus to run toward her. "Did you see me? I did the monkey bars all by myself." Serena crouched to meet her. "I saw, and you were amazing." Clara glowed at the praise, then tugged Serena's hand, pulling her toward the swings. Marcus followed, a quiet smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come," he admitted, as Serena settled Clara onto the swing and began to push gently. "I said I would," she answered simply, watching Clara's hair fly back with each arc through the air, and she meant it. She hadn't felt so certain about anything in a long while. The afternoon drifted by in the easy rhythm of shared company. They wandered from the swings to the climbing frame, pausing often so Clara could demonstrate her latest accomplishment. Serena found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, her worries about perception and reputation forgotten beneath the clear blue sky. When Clara dashed off to join a game of tag with other children, Marcus and Serena settled onto a bench nearby. A hot dog vendor pushed his cart along the path, the scent of grilled onions and mustard wafting in the air. Serena grinned. "I can't remember the last time I had a hot dog from a stand, probably college." "Then today's the day," Marcus replied, standing to wave the vendor over. Soon they sat side by side, paper napkins in hand, eating food that was messy and imperfect, yet strangely perfect. Serena took a bite, savoring the simplicity. "This might be better than any five-star dinner I've had in a long time." Marcus chuckled, the sound low and genuine. "Glad to know Willowbrook's street food can compete with your business dinners." She glanced at him, catching the teasing glint in his eyes, but said nothing of the truth hiding behind her silence. Instead, she let the moment linger, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. When it came time to exchange numbers, Marcus pulled out his phone, typing carefully before showing her the screen. He had saved her contact as simply Serena. No last name, no title, no label to weigh it down. For reasons she couldn't fully explain, the sight of it touched her deeply. It was the first time in years she had been seen without the shadow of her company, her fortune, or her influence, just Serena. As Clara returned breathless and laughing, Serena realized this was what she had been missing. Not the grandeur of boardrooms or the security of wealth, but the quiet joy of a child's laughter, the steady presence of a man beside her, and the gift of being known simply, freely, without pretense. The weeks that followed unfolded with a kind of quiet rhythm Serena hadn't known she was missing. What began as a chance encounter at Linen Grove Bistro grew into something that wove itself into her days with unexpected ease. She found herself looking forward to the ordinary: cups of coffee at a corner cafe where the barista knew Marcus's order by heart, afternoons at the museum where Clara tugged them excitedly from one exhibit to the next, evenings filled with the simple magic of a puppet show that left the little girl laughing so hard she had to wipe tears from her cheeks. Serena discovered joy in these moments, not because they were extravagant, but precisely because they were. For the first time in years, her schedule wasn't dictated by board meetings or investor calls, but by the rhythm of a child's laughter and the warmth of a man's smile. Marcus would share stories from his classroom, his students struggling through Shakespeare, the wrestling team's small victories, and Serena listened as if each word mattered because they did. He had a way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary. For her part, she kept her own stories vague, speaking of projects and clients, letting her answers drift just far enough to avoid suspicion. She told herself it was to protect the fragile newness of what they were building, but deep down she knew it was also fear of shattering the simplicity they had found together. One evening, Marcus invited her to his apartment for a movie night. Clara, already in pajamas patterned with tiny stars, curled up beside them on the worn couch, her head resting against her father's arm. They watched an animated film, and Serena found herself laughing at the same moments Clara did, her heart warmed by the unspoken rhythm of belonging. When Clara finally drifted to sleep, Marcus carried her gently to her bedroom, tucking her in with the care of a man who had lived every day for his daughter. Serena waited in the quiet living room, the glow of the television casting soft light across the space. She noticed the details, the stack of books on the coffee table, the scuffed edges of the furniture, the photographs of Clara taped proudly to the fridge. It was a home that told a story of love, not wealth. Marcus returned, settling beside her on the couch. For a moment neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy but charged, like the pause before the first note of a song. He glanced at her, his eyes searching as though weighing whether the ground beneath him was steady enough for the step he wanted to take. "You're amazing with her," he said quietly. "Clara adores you." Serena smiled, her voice softer than she intended. "The feeling is mutual, she's special." Something shifted in the air between them. Marcus reached for her hand, tentative at first, then with more certainty when she didn't pull away. Serena's breath caught, not from surprise, but from the rightness of it, the way his touch felt less like discovery and more like recognition. When he leaned in, she met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, unhurried, carrying with it the tenderness of two people who had built trust slowly, one moment at a time. It wasn't fireworks or spectacle. It was something deeper, an affirmation that what they were building mattered. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead lightly against hers, a quiet smile curving his lips. Serena closed her eyes, letting herself savor the stillness, the warmth, the simple truth that in this small apartment, on this worn couch, she had found a piece of happiness that felt more real than anything her wealth had ever given her. The morning had begun with a kind of ease Serena wished she could bottle. Sunlight streamed through the blinds of Marcus's small apartment, the smell of pancakes filling the air as Clara chattered about her upcoming science fair. Serena sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee warming her hands, watching the scene with quiet contentment. For a moment it felt as though she belonged entirely in this life, simple, grounded, filled with laughter instead of deadlines. Then her phone buzzed, the sound sharp, insistent, and the color drained from her face the moment she saw the code flashing across the secure screen. Her company needed her, not tomorrow, not in an hour now. She rose quickly, muttering an apology as she stepped into the hallway to answer. The voice of her CFO spilled through the line, tense and urgent. "Serena, the markets in Asia are spiraling. Our Singapore branch is under pressure and Hong Kong is demanding immediate direction. The board is already assembling. We need you." Her mind shifted into crisis mode in an instant. "I'll be there," she replied, her voice calm though her chest felt tight. "Have the jet ready within the hour." She ended the call, pressed the phone to her chest for a fleeting second, then returned to the kitchen. Clara was mid-story, waving her fork as she described the model volcano she planned to build. Marcus looked up, his brow furrowing at the strain on Serena's face. "Everything okay?" Serena forced a smile she didn't feel. "Work emergency. I'm so sorry, but I have to leave. It's international, different time zones." She leaned down to kiss Clara's hair, inhaling the sweet scent of syrup and soap. "I'll need you to tell me all about that volcano when I get back." Clara's smile dimmed, but she nodded, brave in a way that twisted Serena's heart. Marcus walked her to the door, confusion etched across his features. "Back when?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, eyes dropping to the floor. "A few days, maybe a week." She pressed a quick kiss to his cheek before he could ask more, whispering, "I'll call when I can," and then she was gone. Days stretched into nights on the other side of the world. Serena moved between boardrooms and conference calls, her mind consumed with salvaging billions in markets that threatened to unravel. She called Marcus when she could, but the conversations were short, hurried, and never enough. Clara's voice would float through the background sometimes, sweet and distant, tugging at Serena's chest with a longing she couldn't satisfy. "You're in Asia?" Marcus asked one night, his voice carrying both surprise and unease. "For an investment job." "It's complicated," she said softly, hating how rehearsed the words had begun to sound. "That's what you keep saying," he murmured, and the disappointment laced through his tone was sharper than any market crisis she had faced. By the time she returned to Willowbrook, exhaustion clung to her, but the ache of absence weighed heavier. She texted Marcus the moment her plane landed, her message simple, "I'm back, can I come over?" His reply was just as brief, "We're home." Serena knew then that something fragile had shifted. The laughter they had built in cafes, museums, and puppet shows had been replaced by questions she hadn't yet answered. Though she told herself it was still early, that they could find their way back, the silence between their calls lingered like the first crack in glass, thin, nearly invisible, but dangerous all the same. When Serena finally stood at Marcus's door, suitcase still at her side, her heart pounded harder than it had in any boardroom. Clara's face was the first thing she saw when the door swung open, bright, surprised, hopeful. "You're back," the little girl exclaimed, throwing her arms around Serena's waist. "Did you bring me something from your trip?" Serena froze, guilt piercing her. She hadn't thought of gifts, only markets and numbers. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It was all work, no shopping," she murmured, brushing Clara's hair back from her forehead. Marcus appeared in the doorway behind his daughter, his expression unreadable. "Welcome back," he said, voice clipped, polite but cold enough to sting. "Can we talk?" Serena asked. He nodded, guiding her toward the living room. "Clara, play in your room for a little while, please." "But she just got here," Clara protested. "Just for a bit," Marcus said gently, though his eyes never left Serena. Once the child's footsteps faded, the silence stretched. Marcus crossed his arms, leaning against the wall as though creating distance he wasn't ready to bridge. "So," he said finally, "are you going to tell me what's really going on? Because investment jobs don't usually require private jets to Asia at a moment's notice." Serena's throat tightened. The words she had rehearsed on the plane now felt brittle, inadequate. "You're right," she admitted quietly. "I haven't been completely honest with you." His jaw tensed. "Are you married? Is that it?" "What? No, nothing like that." She shook her head, stepping closer, though he didn't move. "I'm not just in investments. I'm the founder and CEO of Caldwell Innovations." The name filled the room like a stone dropping into still water. Marcus blinked, confusion flickering into recognition. "Caldwell Innovations," he repeated slowly. "The company that's always on the news, renewable energy storage. That's yours." "It is," she whispered. "We're valued at over 11 billion. He sank onto the couch, staring at the floor as if trying to reassemble the world he thought he knew. "So all this time, coffee shops, hot dogs in the park, dinners at little restaurants, you let me pay. You watched me leave tips that probably stretched my budget, and you said nothing." Serena clasped her hands together, her voice breaking. "Because I wanted you to see me. Not my money, not the company, just me." His eyes lifted, and the disappointment in them cut deeper than anger ever could. "But you lied to me. You let me believe something else." "I omitted," she whispered. "I never wanted to deceive you, Marcus. People always want something from me. Business deals, donations, connections. No one ever just wants me, but you did. You treated me like a person." He shook his head, pain and frustration etched into every line of his face. "Do you understand how that feels, to realize the woman sitting in my living room, laughing with my daughter, eating hot dogs beside me, is living in a world I can't even imagine? Jets, markets, billions, and me. I'm just trying to save for Clara's college fund." Quickly she reached for his hand. "They shouldn't matter between us." He pulled back, rising to his feet. "But they do, they're real, and what about Clara? She's attached to you already. What happens when your world pulls you away again, when you disappear for weeks with nothing but vague phone calls?" Serena's eyes filled, the truth of his words burning. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. "I should have told you sooner, I should have explained better." Marcus paced, torn between anger and hurt. Finally he stopped, his shoulders sagging. "I need time, this is a lot to process." From the hallway, Clara's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, why are you mad at Serena?" Marcus closed his eyes, his voice softening. "I'm not mad, sweetie, we're just having a grown-up talk." Serena turned toward the child, her heart shattering at the confusion in those innocent eyes. Kneeling, she whispered, "I need to go home now, but I promise I'm not disappearing again." Clara held out her pinky promise. Serena linked her finger with the child's, her voice steady even as her chest ached. "Pinky promise." As she walked out into the cool night air, she realized she had revealed her truth, and in doing so, she might have lost the only thing that had ever made her feel truly seen. 2 nights passed in silence before Serena gathered the courage to reach out. Her message was simple, almost pleading. "There's something I need to show you. Please come tonight." When Marcus finally agreed, his reply was short and cautious. She exhaled as though she had been holding her breath for days. The town car pulled up to his building at dusk. He was already waiting on the steps, hands shoved into his pockets, his expression guarded. He slid into the back seat beside her, leaving careful space between them. "Where are we going?" he asked. "My home," she answered softly, "the real one." The car wound through Willowbrook's historic district until it stopped before a tall brownstone framed by trees. Marcus glanced up at it, expecting grandeur, but finding something quieter, more human. When she let him inside, he paused in the doorway. Hardwood floors stretched beneath warm rugs, shelves lined with books filled the living room. A faint scent of lavender clung to the air. This wasn't a palace meant to impress, it was a home meant to be lived in. "It's not what I pictured," Marcus admitted, his voice low. Not marble floors and gold chandeliers, Serena teased gently, though her smile trembled. I wanted you to see where I actually live, not the houses I keep for business or the places people expect me to show off. This is mine, this is me. She led him through the rooms, showing him the small kitchen where she had once burned an omelet, the office where papers lay scattered from late-night calls, the cozy reading nook she retreated to when the world felt too loud. Finally, they sat across from each other in the living room, glasses of wine between them, the weight of unspoken words filling the air. I should have told you from the beginning, Serena began, her voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid that the moment I said CEO or billions, you'd look at me differently, but in keeping that fear, I hurt you and Clara. That was never what I wanted. Marcus studied her, his expression a careful balance between caution and something softer. What do you want, Serena? She reached across the table, her hand open but not forcing his. I want honesty. From this moment on, no more omissions, no half-truths. I promise you transparency. And more than that, I promise that Clara comes first always. If being with me ever hurts her, I'll step back. She deserves stability, and you deserve trust. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. His thumb brushed the rim of his glass, his thoughts unreadable. Then finally his shoulders eased. You know what the hardest part of these last few days was? He asked. Missing you and realizing Clara missed you too. She asked if you'd broken your pinky promise. Serena's chest tightened, tears pricking her eyes. I meant it when I promised her. I don't want to disappear again. Marcus leaned back, exhaling slowly as though surrendering to something he had been resisting. I can't pretend this isn't complicated, but I missed you. Both of us did, and maybe that means it's worth trying. Relief washed over Serena, fragile but real. She reached for his hand again, and this time he didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, tentative yet steady, like two people learning to walk together after stumbling apart. In the quiet of that brownstone, beneath the glow of lamplight, Serena realized this was not a grand reconciliation scripted by wealth or circumstance. It was something simpler, something harder, something truer. A man willing to try again, a woman ready to live without hiding. And somewhere between them, the promise of a future where honesty, not fear, would guide the way. The weeks that followed felt like an experiment in balance, two lives stitched carefully together. Serena kept her word. She showed up not as the polished CEO with tailored suits and a driver waiting outside, but as Serena, the woman who knelt beside Clara's desk during open house night, listening intently as the little girl pointed out her crayon drawings on the classroom wall. She sat in a folding chair at the back of the auditorium during the school's spring concert, clapping until her palms stung when Clara's class sang off-key but proudly. For Clara, it wasn't about who Serena was in the world. It was simply that she came. Parents whispered in the hallways, curious eyes following them when Marcus and Serena walked side by side. Some looked skeptical, others envious, but Serena held Marcus's hand openly, unashamed of the attention. For years she had been defined by headlines and valuations. For the first time, she wanted to be defined by presence, by showing up for the people who mattered. Marcus, in turn, stepped into her world. He visited Caldwell Innovations on a quiet Friday, his collared shirt slightly wrinkled from a day of teaching. Serena walked him through glass-walled corridors and buzzing labs, introducing him to the engineers and researchers who stopped mid-task to greet their CEO. He saw the weight she carried, the scale of decisions that stretched across continents. Yet as she leaned in to explain a new battery prototype, her excitement sparkling, he realized that beneath all the grandeur was the same woman who ate hot dogs with him on a park bench. He met her board members at a formal reception, enduring their raised brows and probing questions. So, you're the teacher, one asked with a tone Marcus recognized all too well. He felt the weight of judgment, the subtle dismissal. But when Serena slid her hand into his, anchoring him with a glance that said, "You belong here because I want you here," he stood taller. The world outside didn't make their merging easy. Paparazzi photos began to surface, Serena holding Clara's hand at the zoo, Marcus carrying grocery bags beside her in Willowbrook's Market Square. Headlines speculated, strangers commented, but inside their small circle of three, life felt steadier than the noise outside. Clara was the truest witness. She would run into Serena's arms at pickup, her laughter ringing brighter than any camera flash. She would curl between them on the couch, content as though her family had always been shaped this way. One evening, as Serena read aloud from a book while Marcus graded papers at the table, Clara whispered drowsily, "I like it when you're both here. It feels like home." Serena's throat tightened, her hand pausing mid-page. She met Marcus's eyes over the top of the book, and in his gaze she saw the same unspoken truth. This was what mattered, not the whispers, not the headlines, not the divide between classrooms and boardrooms. What mattered was Clara's smile, the peace of knowing they had built something that could stand steady despite the world tugging at its edges. They kept walking hand in hand in school gymnasiums filled with folding chairs, in boardrooms where suits turned curious, on sidewalks where cameras trailed too close. Through it all they remained side by side, choosing again and again to be a family in the only way that truly counted. A year later, the brownstone in Willowbrook no longer felt like Serena's home alone. Marcus's books lined the shelves beside hers. Clara's drawings decorated the refrigerator, and the sound of laughter filled the halls in a way that money could never buy. They had blended their lives carefully, gently, until the three of them moved as though they had always belonged together. That summer evening was warm. The garden behind the house was strung with fairy lights that twinkled softly in the branches. Serena had thought they were for Clara, who loved to pretend the lights were stars within reach. She had no idea Marcus had been planning something else. Clara had already gone to bed, her new bedroom sunny, full of stuffed animals and books, now a sanctuary she proudly called her own. Serena stepped out into the garden with 2 glasses of wine, surprised to find Marcus waiting by the old oak tree. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled, and yet his expression carried a seriousness that made her heart skip. "What's all this?" she asked, motioning to the glow around them. He took both her hands in his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed the weight of the moment. "A year ago I walked into a restaurant just trying to keep a promise to my daughter. I never imagined I'd find this, us." Before Serena could respond, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Slowly, almost reverently, he lowered himself to one knee. The sight stole her breath. Inside the box was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. Not the kind of ring her world expected, but the kind that spoke of effort, of sacrifice, of love. "I saved $1 at a time," he admitted, his voice catching. "I wanted to do this part on my own." Tears welled in Serena's eyes as her hand flew to her mouth. "Marcus." "Serena Caldwell," he said, his gaze unwavering, "you are the woman who sits through puppet shows, who makes hot dogs taste like a feast, who reads bedtime stories to Clara with all the voices just right. You are also the woman who built an empire but still chooses us, chooses family. Will you marry me?" Her heart surged with emotion, and in that instant all the noise of her world fell away. It wasn't about billions or headlines or power. It was about this man on his knees beneath fairy lights and the little girl asleep upstairs who already felt like her daughter. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. Then he rose and pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he would never let go. The garden seemed to glow brighter, the night air alive with promise. Serena buried her face against his shoulder, overwhelmed by the truth that washed over her. All her life she had measured worth in numbers, in deals, in success. But here in this garden she finally understood the most valuable thing she would ever hold was not her company or her fortune. It was a home filled with laughter, a daughter's smile, and the steady love of the man who had seen her not as a CEO, but simply as Serena. In the dim glow of Linen Grove Bistro, Serena Caldwell, a billionaire CEO, sat alone, stung by a no-show date until Marcus Hale, a single father, and his daughter Clara turned her night of rejection into the start of a family. Their story unveils a powerful lesson. The most profound connections often bloom from moments of vulnerability and kindness. Serena, cloaked in wealth but craving authenticity, found solace in Marcus's unassuming presence and Clara's radiant joy. By offering her table to a father keeping a birthday promise, she opened her heart to a world where love outweighs status. As their bond grew through park hot dogs and puppet shows, Serena learned that true wealth lies not in billions, but in the laughter of a child and the trust of a man who saw her for who she was, not what she owned. Marcus, too, discovered that opening his heart again could heal old wounds, building a family with Serena through quiet, honest moments. This tale stirs the soul, evoking tears for the loneliness they overcame and warmth for the home they created. It reminds us that life's greatest gifts often arrive unannounced in a shared cake, a pinky promise, or a simple choice to show up for someone else. We're challenged to embrace vulnerability, to see beyond titles, and to cherish the ordinary moments that weave lasting bonds. Which moment touched you most, Serena's kindness at the bistro or Clara's sleepy words calling their trio a home? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what moved you. If stories of unexpected love and second chances warm your heart, hit subscribe and join our community for more tales that remind us kindness can redefine our lives. Your story matters. Let's connect.